Good morning, Jody.
Good morning, Robin. I'm glad you got the memo to wear white today.
I know it's springtime, right?
Yeah, yeah. Maybe I shouldn't make reference to what we're wearing if we're doing a podcast and people can't see us, but what does that say about us that we start dressing alike now?
Oh, that's scary.
I
That's the
know.
special agent mom podcast power.
I know. That's frightening. Anyway,
So
good morning.
welcome, welcome.
To our listeners, I'm Jody Drake, the Family and Consumer Science Extension Agent for K-State Research and Extension in Pratt County, Kansas.
And I'm Robin Eubank Callis, and I'm the K-State Research and Extension Agent in Barber County.
It was starting to feel like spring last week. And then I woke up this morning and the temperature was 33 degrees and I grabbed a sweater. So, welcome to Kansas.
I'm by the time this airs, I'm assuming it's going to be nice and warm again. And I'm in denial that yes, it's Kansas and we're going to yo-yo for probably the next 2 months.
We probably will. We probably will. But spring is supposed to be here now. And that means that Easter will also be here soon. At least that's what the stores keep telling me when I walk in and am inundated with Easter candy and Easter treats and Easter decorations and blah, 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 blah. So there you go.
Except an optimistic Easter outlook there. Does the
I
Easter
know.
bunny still visit your house?
Okay, so true to life, the oldest of my children, the one that's in college, just sent me a TikTok of how you're never too old to get Easter baskets from your mother.
Uh-huh.
I couldn't help but notice that the woman in the video was being taped by her college age daughter in the back. You could see her daughter in the mirror in the back. Nice try, college age daughter. So my go-to thing for my children, my adult daughters, for Easter, I buy them flip-flops. They get Easter flip-flops because
Wow.
everybody needs a cheap pair of flip-flops.
But yes.
Now, do they keep track of them? No, but they last for a little bit. They might get some candy. Depends. That's about it. I was just never big on getting them a whole bunch of stuff for Easter. When they were little bitty, we would do Easter egg hunts and they'd get a whole bunch of candy. So,
See, and I'm fortunate we have local groups that have Easter egg hunts. So
yeah,
we
that's
can
a big
attend
deal.
those and participate in that. Um,
I mean, they
my
would go to
son,
4 or 5. I mean,
yeah,
they had way more than they needed.
my son might be at the point he's getting competitive now, but for the first several years, we'd be there and I'm like, go pick up the eggs, which, they're all separated by age group. So he wasn't being ran over by bigger kids or anything. But he'd like pick up 3 eggs. Like, I got all the blue ones. I'm happy. I'm like, dude, I'm so glad you're happy. That's, all that matters. Plus, I, don't have a whole big basket of Easter eggs coming to my house. So,
Right.
but
Exactly.
I do usually do something Easter baskety for him, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he's 5. I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
that's fine.
I
Do you
know,
do
but
the whole
it's
Easter bunny thing?
we have not.
I've got to be careful about that. There might be, yeah. Don't ask my children about that.
Oh, okay.
They'll tell you a bad story.
So I'll tell you a story from my childhood that I remember. We used to dye eggs and then hide them at my grandmother's house.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like real eggs, hard boiled eggs,
Yep.
everything. Grandma found one of them in her flower bed that we couldn't find several weeks later. And it was smelly Easter egg.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think we did that once or twice too, at least once. Yeah. Yeah, we
So,
always hid the real eggs because that was a fun thing to do on Easter afternoon, after you'd eaten lunch and
yeah,
go hide your Easter eggs. Yeah, absolutely.
you know,
Yeah.
and
And
when
my
you're
girls
old
always
enough.
thought, even when they were in high school, they needed to dye Easter eggs. But in a year like this, I would have told them, "Oh no, 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 we are not dyeing Easter eggs." Because back then, I act like it was 50 years ago, but it really wasn't that long ago. Eggs were about 99 cents a dozen.
Right.
And how much are they today?
Well, it depends on your store, but I've seen prices upwards of almost $8 a dozen.
Yeah. The last time I looked at our local grocery store, they were about $5 a dozen. That was for the plain Jane white eggs. That was for a dozen. Now, if you want to get fancy, you can get free range eggs for about 7.50 a dozen, or you can get, what were they called? Pasture raised eggs for almost $8, $8 or $9 a dozen.
Yeah.
I need to charge more for my little chicken eggs that I have. I was only charging about 4. Man, I could be making a killing because they just roam all over the farmyard. Jeez. And sometimes,
Oh,
most of the time, I
okay.
just give them away. So,
So let's reel this conversation back in.
okay.
And I know because what we wanted to talk about was being Easter without eggs.
Yes.
But the science side of it, the thing that we tend to pride ourselves on, is talking about how we can replace eggs in the kitchen.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Because people honestly cannot afford to buy eggs right now. So, what can you use instead is the question. And we have an answer,
we do.
right? Okay. All right.
Well, and I think we need to start out by saying we have an answer just because we have a food scientist who's helped give us these answers. So I want to give a shout out to Karen Blakesley. She is our rapid response coordinator. And I believe she's got a couple of other titles in the at Kansas State University too. But Karen, um, I'm going to go ahead and say it. She's an all around good egg because
She
she
absolutely is. And she, pun intended, and she absolutely saves our behinds more than once when we've had to call her in an emergency and say, Karen, I don't know the answer. Can you please help me? And she's very gracious about answering all of our weird questions. So thank you, Karen.
And
Yeah.
that's exactly where it gets the name Rapid Response Center for Food Science is because that's Karen, and she does help us out there. So, what have we learned from her about eggs, Jody?
So she recently did a news release through K State, and she cited a lot of information from the University of Illinois. They had published a publication on various substitutes for recipes that require binding, leavening, moisture, and other alternatives. So she recommended based on that information, she recommended using 2 ounces of extra firm tofu to replace one boiled egg. Okay. So if a recipe utilizes eggs to hold ingredients together, Karen suggests using 1 tablespoon of chia seeds or ground flax seeds to mixed with 3 tablespoons of water to replace one egg.
Which, if you've
So think
never
about it.
used those seeds,
Yeah.
what happens is they, when you have them in the water, release kind of a gelatinous. Um, it does, it binds the water up, it makes it gelatinous. Which, if you think about what an egg does to help bind ingredients together. I'm thinking about meatloaf. You would never notice if you put ground flaxseed in your meatloaf, and it could definitely replace the binder that an egg does because
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And speaking of gelatinous, you could actually just use a package of plain gelatin with 2 tablespoons of warm water to replace one egg because you're not using it for a flavor additive. You're just using it as a binder to hold things together. So meatloaf is a great example um, of something that just needs a binder you're not using it for flavor. You just need to hold that meatloaf together. You could use
Mhm.
plain gelatin. I mean, it might have a funky consistency, but it's gonna hold together, and that's your goal. Yeah.
Well, and I mean, I think about my meatloaf recipe, and you don't know there's eggs in there. It doesn't come across as like you
You're
said.
using a lot of other
So
seasonings, I would imagine.
oh, yeah, absolutely. So
Do you put
that gelatin
do
would
you
be a good answer there.
do you put bacon or barbecue sauce on top of yours? Your meatloaf?
Uh, the recipe I'm thinking of, it's a homemade barbecue sauce
Yeah, yeah.
on top.
I think mine calls for, ketchup or barbecue sauce on top of mine. I think I used to use a Betty Crocker recipe. Yeah. For
Yeah.
leavening and baking, um, for leavening and baking, use the key or flaxseed mixture plus a half teaspoon of baking powder. So, say mixture plus baking powder for each egg. For moistness in baking, use a quarter cup of applesauce. And I have made cookies that way before, um, on purpose before eggs were a whole lot, just because I was cutting out some oil. Actually, I replaced it instead of vegetable oil. I was cutting down on some fat in the cookies and I used applesauce. And I served it to first graders and they didn't know the difference. They didn't know there was applesauce in their cookies. They thought it was great. Um, anyway, you can use a quarter cup of applesauce, mashed banana, or pureed avocado. That's a very healthy oil. Or pureed garbanzo beans or silken tofu for each egg.
So I want people to stop and think here. So we listed a whole lot of things that you could use to replace an egg there. And we can absolutely include the link so you can but if I'm making pure white pretty sugar cookies, probably not going to grab the pureed avocado. So just stop and think about that. But in brownies, absolutely, avocados would provide that moisture and that silky flavor. And if you're listening to us, you can't see that Jody just shrugged her shoulders at me. I happen to know she's not a huge avocado fan.
Well,
Um,
but, mixed in with things, I've had black bean brownies before. They're pretty good.
yeah,
They're not bad.
well, but I'm saying I am an avocado fan, and that it's a mild enough flavor that if you put it in
Right.
something like a brownie,
Mhm.
you're not going to taste the avocado.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you didn't taste the black beans and the black bean brownies either, because I think I made them for you. So if I
You
remember
made them
right,
for me. You snuck them in on me and you didn't tell me.
yeah, probably that would be something I would do to you.
Yeah, you totally would. Another option is 2 tablespoons of mayonnaise for each egg. I think I would taste that. Some people are very picky about their mayonnaise.
Some people are, yes, but once again, you're mixing this into a whole baked item. Where that's what we're talking about for the leavening and the moisture. I mean, if you're leavening, you got to add the baking powder, but just for moisture. Um, and to be fair, you've got to do this where it makes sense. We've mentioned brownies, chocolate chip cookies, something like that is not going to be noticeable. Um, angel food cakes that, I think of them as a springtime, summertime kind of cake.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's not where you're gonna replace eggs.
No.
You still need your eggs to make an angel food cake.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
the egg whites. Yeah. Yeah.
so when we're talking about that, just keep that in mind. We're not saying this is across the board and for everything, but this is the way that if your family's trying I mean, we've done a grocery shopping on a budget episode before.
Mhm.
And so if you're trying to cut down your egg cost a little bit, um, there's some of the places there. Okay, so what else you got for me?
The other some other suggestions she gave wasn't necessarily for a replacement, but she does mention that the American Egg Board says that you can keep your eggs that are in shells about 4 to 5 weeks past their packing date. I think, yeah, past the pack date, which would likely go past the sell by date. So, just keep that in mind. You can store them for quite a while in your refrigerator. I always do the whole float test that we talked about in our poultry episode. So what that is get a big whether it's a glass or a bowl of water, and if the egg floats, that means it's not good. It should sink to the bottom. That means it's got too much air, too much gas, and or just air in that egg, and is no good. You should throw it out. But or if it's Easter time, you could go ahead and boil it and dye it. I mean, just don't eat it because it's probably gone
Yeah,
good brown.
yeah, please don't eat it.
Karen also says you can freeze your eggs. Um, I've never done.
I have to admit, yeah.
Yeah, I believe she has some instructions for freezing eggs. She actually she lists a some instructions from the National Center for Home Food Preservation on freezing eggs. So there are ways you can preserve your eggs. Um, I cannot speak to how well they turn out later. Um, so yeah, but honestly, that expensive, I would think you're going to be using them sparingly as you're buying them. So I don't
You
know
know,
about that.
and I still think about an egg is a great source of protein. It is, absolutely.
Oh yeah.
And at $6 a dozen, we're talking 50 cents an egg. So while
Yeah.
it seems really expensive compared to where egg prices once were, it's still an affordable grocery staple to have in your
Hmm.
house.
Hmm. I have, I only have chicken eggs. I also have some goose eggs, which are big. I mean, whoop, big. And I did put them on Facebook one day because I hadn't access of them. And offered this is during spring break, and I proposed the idea, this is make a great spring break craft. You could blow them out. In other words, you poke a hole in each end of the egg and then you blow out the yolk, and then you can color on the outside and make some nice Easter decorations with them. I didn't get any takers. I can't imagine why. Um, I actually did one. It's not that hard, honestly, to blow out the yolk. I don't know, it took me a couple minutes. It is not that hard. And it is a fun craft with your kiddos, but I didn't get any takers. So anyway,
So, Jody, since the first time you mentioned your goose eggs,
uh
I've been sitting on this question. Do you have the goose that laid the golden egg?
no, definitely not. Although they act like they are golden eggs, because if you get too close to that goose while she's sitting on her eggs, holy cow, that male goose comes for you. You don't want to go anywhere near that goose that's sitting on those eggs. Stay far away. Let me tell
Sorry, I've been trying to work that one in all morning since you mentioned since we're
you.
we're all about
Thanks so
eggs
much.
today.
Uh-huh. Yeah, thanks a lot. So I would have gladly given away my goose eggs because I'd just hate to see them go to waste. But and I mean takers. But I have seen people selling goose eggs for like $3 each on Facebook for people who consume them. I mean, there's a market for it somewhere, but apparently not where I live. So there you go. Anyway, you had some good ideas for things other things to do other than an egg hunt, on Easter.
Right. So yeah, and so now that we're done baking and we're thinking about Easter, um, I shared that growing up we boiled eggs, we colored eggs. Um, but I I'm just pretty sure I can't do that this year with my son. I can't um I mean, I don't want to sound it just doesn't seem financially responsible to boil a dozen eggs for my child when I know there's an egg shortage, if that makes sense. And
Absolutely, yeah.
you mentioned already the idea of blowing the eggs out so that way you could still scramble that egg.
Yeah.
Um, it you could bake with it. It's probably not going to come out where you're going to make an egg over easy with it. Just to
Mhm.
prepare people. Um, but there's a lot of ways you could still cook that egg and use that egg. Of course, plastic eggs are out there everywhere. Like you mentioned, when you walk into any store, you
Yes.
can find plastic eggs.
Yeah.
Um, I, always worry about getting them all picked up before they become part of my yard or the lawnmower gets them. Um, things can hide. So, maybe plastic eggs aren't for everybody. So we've got some ideas here. We're going to run through some
Okay.
ideas
All right. You go
um
first.
that we found. Well, the one that I found that I thought, oh, I wish I had the time, and maybe I'll make the time, is to make quilted Easter eggs. And this could be
Oh,
done with a thrift store quilt or something that's just past its prime. But
oh,
the
so you're not
website
actually
I
going to make the quilt yourself? Is that what you're saying?
yeah, no, I'm not going to spend the time to make a quilt to cut a quilt up. I have some, but the website I found this on cut it out egg shapes out of a quilt that was beyond being saved, and
Mm-hmm.
then sewed around the egg shape, and then cut out one that's about 2/3 of the size of the egg.
Uh-huh.
Um, covers up, so you create a little pocket when you sew the little 2/3 of an egg over the top of an egg. And so if you do hide candy inside your eggs or that sort of thing, you can tuck them inside the little quilt pockets and
Oh,
then they could be hidden. Of course, I love that idea because once you've sewn around them, you could wash those suckers and keep them for years and they become kind of an
exactly.
heirloom piece in and of themselves, even if the quilt wasn't an heirloom piece to start. So anyway, that was the one that I found that I'm like, oh, I love that. And I really wish I sort of had time to do it, but I don't know. Maybe I'll make time. It's not a complex sewing project. Anyway,
Fun, fun, fun. Well,
what
the
was one of
last,
your ideas that you had?
well, this really isn't my idea, but this is something that my girls did when they were little. We have the little town that I grew up by. I grew up out in the country, but the little town that I grew up by, the little town of Iuka, always had an Easter egg hunt for the kids in the surrounding area in their little park, and they always decorate it so cute. Anyway, and they don't use plastic eggs at all. They just throw out some sealed candy, so that it doesn't get
Hmm.
dirty, and hopefully it's not too hot of a day and the chocolate doesn't melt. But they make sure they spread it far and wide, and then they release the kids by age groups so that this age can go grab some candy first, and then the next age group can go out a little bit further out. And they make sure every kid gets plenty of candy. And it's just so much it's easier on the organizers. They don't have to stuff eggs. And the kids get plenty of candy. And it's just super easy. And we know everybody. We know it's a safe environment. We know the kids are safe, and the girls just loved it when we were little. It was super easy to do.
And I've seen that done, and sometimes they incorporate granola bars because they are, in that sealed packaging as well,
Yes.
or even drinks that are sealed up.
Yeah, I've not seen
So
that.
things that wouldn't fit in your traditional eggs anyway. You can think outside the box a little bit there. Um, if you just skip the eggs
Yeah,
for your Easter
absolutely.
egg hunt. So,
Yep. Yep.
all right.
You shared a cute idea with me. You sent it to me on Messenger the other day. That um, scrambled egg thing.
Yes, scramble your eggs. So they did use plastic eggs for that.
Hmm.
But it was larger prizes. So instead of maybe um a bunch of little candy, it was a bag of jelly beans, or maybe it wasn't even food related. It was a new movie that was out, DVD or something like that. But what it was the um prize name. I think one of them even was cash. And so you'd spell the
That's
letters
probably
out
something. Yeah,
CASH
maybe better for
and cut
teenagers.
cut those, yeah, definitely for teenagers. Cut those letters up and hide them in the eggs. And then what you did is you went out, you found an egg, came back with your letter, and put it on whatever prize. And then the person who put the last letter down for that prize got to take the prize home. So it was a competitive on who got which prize because they got the last letter. Some random chance associated there too, not just competitive spirit. So that was kind of I thought it definitely an interesting idea. And I think if I had older kids or even, if I had adult kids coming, that would be fun to do and let some
Yeah.
adults,
Yeah, it's definitely
scramble.
a great one for teenagers and, my college kid who thinks she still needs stuff, things like that for sure. Yeah. Yeah. Which is, very similar to like a scavenger hunt too. You can get all kinds of scavenger hunts ideas online. It's not hard to make up your own. You don't need plastic eggs for that either. Just make up your own Easter themed scavenger hunt. And these are all ideas, if you do have a family gathering, and a lot of people do get together with families on Easter and might have a luncheon or a brunch right after church, or whatever you seem to be doing with your family. I love getting together with family, and my girls always like to get together with their cousins and go do something with them after lunch. So this is kind of what these are, just ideas to do with your kiddos when you have them all together, and just make some good memories. So yeah,
Right.
that's why I threw a scavenger hunt out there. Um,
Well, and similarly, a quick internet search comes up with lots of ideas, but the Minute to Win It marathon, so that you're not
our 4-H kids
competing.
loved those games at camp.
Yeah,
They just did.
you're not competing for eggs on the ground. You're seeing. Oh, I love the Oreo one when you put the Oreo on your forehead and try to wiggle it into your mouth.
Mhm.
So the whole Minute to Win It gets everybody involved and everybody laughing. So, maybe it's not an egg hunt this year.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, absolutely. My girls also kind of grew up in a Hispanic household too, because they spent so much time with my other family, their babysitter, and they're just like family to us. And so they had a lot of pinatas at their birthday parties. Um, their babysitter always made sure they had a pinata when they were little. And I saw a suggestion for that online too. Why not just have a pinata at your Easter celebration too? So I'm sure they make them Easter themed as well. I'm almost positive. So, yeah.
well, and they make them in stores, or you could easily make your own uh,
Yeah.
pinata.
Yeah.
Anybody with a spare cardboard box and some string, and then you can let your kids decorate it. So
Absolutely. Yeah,
it, making an egg shaped one might be more of a challenge, but I know some
possibly.
preteen boys that still enjoy a good pinata at their birthday parties. Um, they're not so concerned about the decorations, but the fun of getting to try to hit something with a bat. So,
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
okay, so it wouldn't be me if we didn't bring a little history into it. But instead of
Okay.
having an egg hunt, you could do an egg roll. So, if you're not familiar, every year the White House has an Easter egg roll on their front lawn. And I wanted to share that this started in 1878 with Rutherford B. Hayes. Um, and so he ordered that any child could come and roll their Easter egg. down the front lawn because it had a nice sloping hill. So, and that tradition's continued. So, with that, you actually lay out lanes. You can use some string and tack down and make your lanes for egg rolls, egg races. And you would only then need an egg, or you could substitute a small, oh, my son has small soccer balls or things, stress ball sort of things that you could roll with a spoon. Um, to be like the Easter egg rolls on the front house lawn. So, and if anybody's interested, I did find out you can put your name in a lottery um about 6 weeks before Easter to qualify to go roll on the White House lawn. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I can't say that I knew that it existed. I don't think I've ever tuned into when it happened or anything like that. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I thought it was really neat that it's a lottery system to sign up to be able to attend.
That
And
makes
so
sense. Yeah.
it, you'd have
That
to
makes
limit the number of people. I mean,
yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
big lawn, but there's a lot of people.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's your next idea, Miss Jody?
Well, if you just want to veg out on your couch and
Mm,
allow your children a little bit of screen time, um, do a search on YouTube for chocolate Easter eggs at the Grand Floridian Hotel at Disney World. I know, hard to imagine. Jody knows something about Disney World. For those of you who don't know, I'm a Disney geek. And they, every year at Easter time, springtime, Easter time, they let their chocolate masters create and sculpt these beautiful pieces of artwork out of chocolate. And I don't know how they do it, but they are absolutely just eye candy. And they just, of course, they're all Disney themed and just eye candy. We were actually there in April one year, a couple of years ago, when my daughter was doing the Disney College program. So, of course, we had to go check up on her. I think it was my sister and I that were there. And so we did tour them live and in person, and they were just amazing. And several Disney vloggers will put it on their YouTube channels. So just do a search, and it's just kind of a nice little, just kind of a nice little waste of time, or whatever. You know, if you enjoy things like that, it's so cool to just look at. You know, you just can't believe that those are edible, that they're really made of chocolate. So it's kind of cool. Yeah.
well, I just think that's a neat career opportunity. If you have a kiddo who's
Yeah,
interested in baking and things like that, that yeah, being a chocolatier is it's a real job
it
and they're
is.
highly skilled in what they do.
Such artwork. It really is. Very cool. Yeah. Yeah. So there you go.
Okay. So I'm looking at our list where we brainstormed ideas ahead of time, and there's one left. And I feel like this is one that we could totally do in my household. But you could paint rocks instead of Easter
Oh,
eggs.
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of people who do paint rocks intentionally with gratitude messages or just even fun designs and then hide them. And then when people find them, then they rehide them for somebody else.
Yeah, and I've seen them in our local park a lot.
Yes.
Um,
Mhm.
just and they're just kind of fun to find in your local parks. Kids really like to find them and rehide them. I've had a few of them bring them into me in my office
There
just
you
because
go.
they think they're fun and they think Miss Drake will want them, and so I'll take them and rehide them in the park. They're just fun. They're fun to have. They really are.
But I think my son's got a rock collection. So we could gather up his rock collection and let him just have fun with paint. And maybe they're all solid colors and not the fancy painted rocks, but then they could be hid in the yard too. And we'd
Oh
find
yeah.
them all summer long, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, whatever you decide to do, springtime is here. It really is. And I just hope you make some memories and enjoy it with your family because it is just, it's just such a promise of new hope and new life. And I think, that's what the whole history of dying eggs is all about. When I did do a quick Google search of that, that's what the whole history of dying eggs is. It's kind of tied to the whole Christian holiday and the resurrection of Christ and new hope and new birth. And a lot of times they would dye their eggs red to represent the blood of Christ. And that's what it's all about is, remembering the reason for the season and all of that. So it's a beautiful tradition. Jenna asked me an interesting question this morning. She wanted to know if you could dye farm fresh eggs, like the brown ones, or mine are often green. What would they look like if you tried to dye them? And you can dye farm eggs. They'll just be a little bit off colored when you dye them. Um, but you certainly can.
Well, and I mean, it's just that you get a different result.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can imagine if you
Yeah.
dye, yeah, you might get it more intense colors sometimes
Yep.
because you don't start with a blank white
Yeah.
palette. So,
Yeah, you can. But if you find a nice egg lady like me who sometimes just says, "Here, just take a dozen," you know, there you go.
so you're saying I need to actually come see you in person before Easter
That's right. That's
to get
exactly
my
right.
egg fix.
Mhm.
Um, so, the one thing I keep thinking, I don't know if your schools do this, but our school's off the Friday before Easter and then even the Monday afterwards. So, I guess what I'm thinking is even if you don't celebrate it as a Christian holiday, you might have some more time with your kids or your grandkids or time to visit family. So, even if
Yeah.
um you don't celebrate the religious aspects that are associated with Easter, it's a great time to reconnect and have maybe just schedule some downtime to do something fun. And if you don't want to participate in an egg hunt or anything, go for a walk. Enjoy you know, I want to say the spring weather. Who knows what the weather will be, but just the time together and doing those things that come with all the traditions we've talked about.
Well, we
So
just talked about Walk Kansas a couple weeks ago. So that started up last Sunday on March 30th. And
March
I just
30th,
set up
yes.
our story walk in our local park. So that just started as well. So yeah.
Okay, so for anybody listening who's never heard of Story Walk, you got a
I'm so
thirty
glad you
second
asked.
advertisement for what that is?
So Story Walk is a program where I set up a children's story on signboards around the 1 mile walking trail in our local park. I did not invent this. This was invented by another organization, which is all explained on the storyboard there. And I partner with our local library to do this. And so when the kids get done reading the story, if they want to, they can go to the library, answer 3 short questions about the story, and they get a prize at the library for doing that. Now, this is not just for kids, this is for adults as well. They can read the story. They often enjoy seeing what new story I'm going to put up. And it just encourages families to get out together and enjoy nature and, get in the great outdoors out together.
So I know when I did one, oh, it's been several years ago, I was asked about, wait a second, you're you're copying books? And no, we don't copy books. We
No.
buy them, so the authors
Yeah.
do get their fair due.
Yeah.
But we do cut up books, which is
We do.
allowable.
Yeah.
But we
Yeah.
do.
We have to
I
buy
just
two
want to.
copies of the book.
Yes.
Yeah. So we can chop it up and then, yeah, chop it up I laminate the pages and then adhere it to the signboards. And then it took a little bit of pounding on Friday to get some of those into the ground because we hadn't had any moisture for a while. So, yeah,
Yeah.
we got her
So
done.
it is. Yeah. It really is a good walk, and if you've got some beginner readers, the great thing is that they get to run and enjoy in between each
Mhm.
stop.
Yeah, we try to keep the stories fairly simple. I know this first one I put up probably had a little more words on the pages than I would like, but it was it's a cute story. It's got your belly button, so it's and
It is
I always post those on our Facebook page when I'm switching them out and what the story is. So
so. All right. Any other thoughts about going eggless for Easter?
no, I do not. No, I think it should be easy to do, and I think you'll come up with some creative things on your own too. So
Right. Well,
yeah,
thank you, Jody. I think this was a fun podcast
yeah,
to
it
come
was.
up with. It's very timely right now with just considering budgets and the cost and to
Yeah.
see maybe how we can do things a little different this year. So, if people have just stumbled across this podcast,
Well, I just talked about our my Facebook page. So if you want to look for us on Facebook, that's Pratt CO Extension on Facebook. Robbins is Barber County Extension on Facebook. Email me at jdrake@ksu.edu. Email Robin at REUBANK at ksu.edu. Look for our podcast on Special Agent Mom Podcast on Spotify and Apple. And I'm on Instagram too at Pratzio Extension. So you can find us on everywhere. We're all linked. And our new episodes drop on Thursday, usually, unless
unless
there's a
it's
book.
Wednesday, unless it's Friday,
Yeah.
we towards the end of the week, we're
We have
good.
our producer controls that. And we're
Mhm.
not just making him up. He does exist. Yep.
And he does a great job of making us sound wonderful. So, and if you just listen to us and you're wondering what are these women actually like, or if you're curious where we started talking about our clothes in the beginning, you can find us on Pratt County Extension's YouTube page.
YouTube. Yep. Yeah, there's
So,
also a link to that on our socials as well. So Pratt County Extension has a YouTube page.
yes.
Yep.
All right. Well, Jody, you have a good week, and
You too.
we'll be back next week.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.